some cases, we've gotten that seat at the table, and look what's happened. Now we have the seat at the table, and a lot of CISOs aren't under the indemnify policy, even though your CEO, your CFO might be. Your CISO's not. So your CISO is sitting alone. And we're seeing what can happen with that. And this is a perfect example. And again, let's make sure we're not being the judge and jury here. We're seeing the filing from the SEC. We see what they have coming to the table. They've kind of put their cards on the table and said, this is what we're going to charge both SolarWinds and Timothy Brown with. You can look at that and say, yeah, man, it's pretty clear that there's some fraud involved here. We haven't seen the other side of that, right? We haven't seen the discoverable items from the, you've seen the prosecution side, but you haven't seen the defendant side. Once you see all of that evidence put together, and as forensic investigators, we go out and we find the facts, and we put the facts on the table. Then the attorneys start dealing with those facts, and they can manipulate and change them and make them kind of go in the favor they want them to go. So again, let's be real careful not to say, hey, we're going to be judge and jury here, and we find him guilty because of what this SEC filing says. Again, for us as CISOs, we need to be very careful, because this is.
And there's somewhat of a collaborative effort between the regulator and the private industry to kind of work out the kinks, so to speak. But when there's an enforcement action taken like this, it sets a precedent for how the agency, in this case the SEC, will do enforcement. And in this particular case, we've got a CISO that's basically being reprimanded for not sharing information at the right time around security posture, as well as not sharing the right information on both counts. And the enforcement action against an individual as a CISO, it sets a precedent, and that precedent has ramifications, and that's what's creating a backlash of practitioners saying, wait a minute here. This enforcement action appears to be a bit draconian, enforcing on an individual, and not necessarily warranted. And then as we peel back kind of the layers, there's some pretty good arguments to support the notion that this is not a precedent that is good for the industry. It's actually a precedent that is negative, has negative consequences to the industry. So some of those negative consequences include potential chief information security officers interviewing for a CISO role and deciding during the interview process that they're uncomfortable with the potential risk to them as an individual, and they step down and say, take me out of the hat. I'm